The Morrison family's monthly dinner was nothing more than a battlefield disguised as elegance. Crystal stemware glinted under the chandelier, silverware gleamed, and designer outfits shimmered. But none of it could mask the underlying hostility. And I, Samantha Bennett, was always the preferred target. So, Samantha, Aunt Margaret's voice was sweet, almost syrupy, as she carefully cut into her fillet. Still working at that, what did you call it? A human resources firm. I sipped my water slowly, letting the chill calm me. If only they knew that my human resources firm was actually Bennett Consulting Group, one of the nation's largest corporate restructuring firms, which had just taken majority control of Morrison Technologies, the jewel of my family's empire. Something like that, I murmured, glancing at my cousin Victoria in her brand new Chanel suit. She had just been promoted to Senior VP at Morrison Technologies, a position handed to her by our Uncle James, the CEO. Human resources. Victoria sniffed, adjusting her pearls. Honestly, Samantha, with your education, you could have done so much better. Even an entry-level job here would pay more. I thought of the corner office I had just finished decorating in the city's priciest skyscraper, directly across from Morrison Technologies. Tomorrow morning, I'd announce sweeping layoffs and restructuring, starting with them. I'm comfortable where I am, I said, cutting a tiny piece of steak. My mother jumped in, eager to distract from my failures. Did you all hear about Victoria's latest project? She's streamlining operations and saving the company millions. If streamlining meant driving the most profitable division into the ground, then yes, Victoria was excelling. My analysts had been quietly building a dossier on her mistakes, all ready for tomorrow. That's our Victoria, Aunt Margaret gushed. A real Morrison success story, unlike some who never reach their potential. Her gaze landed squarely on me, a familiar sting I had endured for years, from turning down Morrison's offer to building my firm from scratch, refusing to crawl back when the first year was tough. Uncle James set down his glass. We're announcing a major expansion next quarter. Morrison Technologies is going to dominate the region. I bit back a smile. By tomorrow, there would be no expansion, and Uncle James wouldn't even be CEO. The board meeting was set for 9 a.m. sharp. Wonderful, James, my father said, ever the loyal sibling. I always knew you had the golden touch. Golden touch, indeed. Risky investments and nepotism had nearly ruined the company. Victoria's rapid promotion was proof. Yet none of them saw the storm heading their way. Victoria leaned in, smile sharp as a blade. If you wanted, Samantha, I could probably find you a position in my department. Entry-level, of course. You'd have to work your way up like everyone else. Everyone else, huh? Like how she climbed from junior analyst to senior VP in 2 years, skipping over dozens more qualified candidates. Thanks, but I'm happy where I am. Happy? Aunt Margaret scoffed. Settling for mediocrity is no reason to be content. What a waste. My phone buzzed. Emily Martinez, my COO. I hesitated. She knew the dinner was happening. Only urgent matters would warrant a call now. Excuse me, I said, standing. I need to take this. Business calls at dinner, my mother muttered. I moved a few steps away but stayed in earshot. Yes, Emily, I said, placing her on speaker. The room went silent as Emily's crisp voice filled the air. The Morrison family layoffs. Termination papers are ready for James Morrison, Victoria, and the current management team. The board approved the restructuring. We just need your go-ahead. Victoria's face went pale. Uncle James dropped his fork. Aunt Margaret's wine froze mid-A. Yes, I said calmly. Proceed. Make sure security is ready tomorrow morning. I want a smooth transition. I ended the call and returned to the table, taking in their shock with quiet satisfaction. Years of ridicule, dismissal, and condescension had led to this moment. You, Uncle James struggled for words. What is this? I smiled, picking up my fork. Bennett Consulting Group acquired controlling interest in Morrison Technologies 3 months ago through shell companies. We've spent that time documenting mismanagement, particularly in Victoria's division. That's impossible. Victoria's perfect composure finally faltered, her voice barely a whisper. Bennett Consulting Group is worth billions, $4.3 billion, to be exact, I said, cutting another piece of steak with deliberate calm. But I suppose that's still small change compared to an entry-level job at Morrison Technologies, isn't it? My mother went pale. Samantha, what have you done? What have I done? I set my fork down, meeting their stunned eyes. I built a company bigger and stronger than Morrison Technologies could ever dream to be. No nepotism, no handouts, no family approval needed. You can't just. Uncle James's voice cracked with rage. Actually, Uncle James, I interrupted smoothly, as of 9 a.m. tomorrow, you won't be CEO anymore. I let the words hang. The board voted last week, after reviewing our documentation of your creative business practices. Victoria leapt to her feet so fast her chair clattered backward. This isn't real. It has to be a joke. Would you like a copy of the paperwork? I reached into my bag. Acquisition documents, board vote, termination letters, everything. I thought it polite to give a preview, considering how family-focused the Morrisons like to claim they are. Aunt Margaret's voice trembled. Samantha, dear, we can work this out. We're family. Family. I laughed softly. Was I family when you called me a failure? When you ridiculed my career choices? When you spent years declaring to everyone that I was a disappointment? I rose, smoothing my Armani dress, more expensive than Victoria's entire wardrobe. The time for family discussions ended long ago. Now it's strictly business. Enjoy your last night as Morrison Technologies executives. Tomorrow will be memorable. Dinner descended into chaos. Victoria stormed out, nearly tripping over her Louboutins as she dialed her lawyer. Uncle James turned purple with fury, threats tumbling from his lips. Aunt Margaret alternated between sobs and accusations. My mother simply sat frozen. Only my father remained composed. As I gathered my things, he walked me to the door. You planned all of this, he said quietly. The timing, the call during dinner, every detail. I turned, a small smile on my lips. Learned from the master, didn't I? Uncle James always said, timing is everything in business. He allowed a ghost of a smile. They never saw you coming. No, I agreed. They were too busy looking down on me to look behind themselves. The next morning, I arrived at Morrison Technologies headquarters at 7:30 a.m., not through the grand lobby Victoria favored, but via my private elevator in the building next door. From my corner office, I could see the storm about to hit. Miss Bennett, Emily greeted, tablet in hand. Security is in place. Board members are assembling in the main conference room. Your uncle arrived early, trying to call an emergency meeting. Victoria is shredding documents in her office. The rest haven't arrived. I adjusted my blazer, smiling. Document everything they attempt to destroy. It could be useful later. At 8:45 a.m., I crossed the sky bridge linking our buildings. Security, now under Bennett Consulting Group, snapped to attention. Through the glass, I saw Uncle James pacing, his commanding air replaced by nervous energy. Board members entered cautiously, avoiding his gaze. They had already seen the evidence. Every vote would go my way. At 8:59 a.m., I paused outside the conference room. Years of mockery and dismissal had led to this precise moment. It's time, Emily murmured. I opened the doors, heels clicking across marble. Silence fell as I strode to the head of the table, Uncle James's old seat. Good morning, I said evenly. Shall we begin? You have no right. Uncle James sputtered, but his voice lacked conviction. Oh, I have every right, I said, opening my portfolio. As CEO of Bennett Consulting Group and majority shareholder of Morrison Technologies, I belong exactly here. Victoria barged in, her hair undone. I've called our lawyers. They'll stop this. Your lawyers can't, I replied smoothly. Everything is legal. The board's vote was unanimous. And as for the documents you've been shredding, I nodded to Emily, who handed thick folders to each board member. We have copies of everything. Victoria's face drained as she flipped through the folders. Mismanaged projects, doctored reports, and years of questionable decisions, all meticulously documented. This is a hostile takeover. Uncle James barked, trying to rally the board. No, Uncle James, I corrected firmly. This is corporate restructuring, a rescue mission for a company you've been mismanaging for years. Aunt Margaret swept in, handbag clutched like a shield. Samantha, dear, surely we can negotiate. We're family. I stood slowly. Family? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the niece you scorned, mocked, and belittled is standing here, in control, and how every word you ever said about me being a failure led right to this moment. She recoiled as if I'd struck her. Or perhaps we should talk about how you and Uncle James handed Victoria positions she didn't earn, pushing out capable employees and steering this company into the ground. Is that really the version of family values you want to defend? The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had all witnessed the favoritism firsthand. None of them spoke as the Morrison family continued to treat the company like a personal playground. The numbers don't lie, I pressed, projecting the quarterly reports on the conference room screen. Under current leadership, Morrison Technologies has lost 40% of its market value. Customer satisfaction has hit record lows. Employee turnover in Victoria's division is approaching 80%. Those numbers are misleading. Victoria protested, her voice trembling despite her effort to appear composed. Are they? I countered. Shall we revisit the Miller contract you lost last month? Or the Thompson deal you sabotaged because you felt threatened by the project manager? Emily handed out another set of documents. These are the immediate personnel changes, effective today. James Morrison, Victoria Morrison, and the entire executive team are being removed from their posts immediately. You can't do this. Uncle James's voice cracked, desperation seeping through. This company is my life's work. No, I said softly, but firmly. This company is your father's legacy. You inherited it, and then ran it into the ground. Now it's my turn to save it, without any of your help. Security appeared at the door. Miss Bennett, shall we begin the office transitions? I nodded. Escort Mr. Morrison and Ms. Morrison to HR. They can pack their offices under supervision. As they were led out, my parents appeared in the doorway. Mom's eyes were red from crying, but Dad actually smiled. The board meeting is adjourned, I announced. Emily will distribute the new organizational charts this afternoon. I suggest everyone review them carefully. As the staff filed out, Mom stepped forward, wringing her hands. Samantha, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. When have you ever trusted anything I did? I knew, Dad said suddenly. Both Mom and I turned to him. Not about the acquisition, he clarified, but I always knew you were building something remarkable. That's why I never pressured you to join Morrison Technologies like James wanted. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. There was no time for sentiment. I had a company to run, 2 companies, in fact. The following weeks unfolded predictably. Uncle James attempted a legal challenge, but our meticulous documentation ended it quickly. Victoria vanished to some exotic location, her Instagram going silent. Aunt Margaret tried to rewrite history, telling anyone who would listen how she had always believed in me. I let her play the part. I had already won, success on my own terms, without approval, without applause. 3 months later, Morrison Technologies was transformed. Fresh leadership, streamlined operations, and a revitalized company culture had doubled stock value and boosted employee satisfaction to record highs. Family dinners continued, but they were different. Gone was the mockery. Instead, awkward attempts at reconciliation replaced it. Uncle James tried to offer advice, as though we were equals. Victoria sent tentative messages about job opportunities. Aunt Margaret recounted old memories, trying to rebuild bridges she had burned. But I no longer needed their validation. Their opinions, once crushing, now meant nothing. I had built something they could not diminish. A year later, I hosted a gala in my penthouse ballroom. Morrison Technologies' turnaround was celebrated by the business community, and yes, my family attended. They watched from the sidelines as I delivered the keynote, outlining the company's transformation. Business leaders applauded my vision and leadership. Photographers captured the moment the failure had saved the family legacy. Standing at the podium, looking across the crowd, I reflected on how far I had come. Success, wealth, influence, they were all measures, but my true victory was understanding my own worth. The greatest triumph is not showing others they were wrong. It's proving to yourself that you were right all along. They had labeled me a failure. I had built something extraordinary. They had underestimated my potential. I had exceeded even my own expectations. And the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's showing yourself what you can achieve when you stop seeking approval from those who doubted you. The view from the top isn't about looking down on others. It's about seeing how far you've climbed and realizing it was always yours to reach. As I concluded my speech, I caught my father's eye. He raised his glass ever so slightly, and in that moment, I saw what I had longed for, not approval, not praise, but respect. Recognition. And I didn't want it, in spite of it,